Welcome everyone, my name is Faulkner. I'm the Online Event Coordinator for Staff Development for Educators, and I'd like to thank you for joining us today for Visual Literacy, Reading and Writing in the Digital Age, grades K through 5 with Lori Elliott. Before we start, there are a few things you should know. To allow for Lori to be heard clearly, attendee microphones are muted. Please use the questions text box on your screen throughout the webinar to ask any questions. Most audio and video problems you might experience during the presentation can usually be solved by closing any other programs or applications you might have open on your computer. The session is being recorded, and assuming no technical difficulties, you'll receive a link to the archive within 48 hours. And finally, at the end of today's presentation, you will see a short survey, and by completing that survey, you do assist us in providing future complimentary webinars. For those who might not know us, Staff Development for Educators provides professional development for pre-K through 12 educators through on-site PD, PD events, web-based PD, and PD resources. We empower educators with research-based, innovative, and rigorous PD that's practical, motivating, and fun. We are pleased to have Dr. Lori Elliott joining us today. Lori is an energetic and passionate National Board certified teacher and trainer. She has taught students of various grade levels and has served as a literacy coordinator and technology integration specialist. Lori believes that relationships and teaching with intention are essential elements for classroom success. She's the author of the Teach Like a Techie series of books and is always a popular SDE presenter. Thanks, Lori. Take it away.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope that you are having a wonderful day, and I know we are at the end of school for many of you, and some of you still have a few days or weeks left. Thank you for joining me at such a busy time. I do believe that the topic we're going to talk about today is really important. It's very current. It's very authentic to where we are as educators and where our students are. In our discussion today, is going to be about visual literacy. And what I have found in my discussions with teachers in the last year or so, that we aren't exactly sure what that means, but it sounds like something kids should know and be able to do. And so I would like to start with just a definition of visual literacy so that you'll have an idea of the kinds of things we're going to discuss during our time together. A definition of visual literacy is the ability to understand, create, and use visual and multimedia images. And I think that this is extremely important with the digital age that we're living in, the amount of information coming at students, and the type of digital resources that students are using in their personal lives, as well as the things that they're using at school. And so we're going to tackle each part of this definition. We're going to talk about how it is that we need to provide things for students so that they'll understand how to really become literate in today's society. So we're going to be focusing on the understand part of literacy, and we're going to talk about the power of pictures. I want to give you some really great resources to use to engage your learners and help meet their needs as digital learners. We're going to also talk about skills for successful surfing. In other words, because they are using so many online tools, what are the best things we need to teach them in order for them not only to be safe, but really to get the best learning out of those tools. And then finally, we're going to discuss the tech tools for visual literacy that are my favorites. That covers that last part of the definition about kids creating their own visuals. So visual literacy is a combination of things. It is a combination of understanding, creating, and using the visuals and multimedia. So we want to be able to do that in our own instruction, and then we want to give kids a skill set that they can use, and finally we want to give them the opportunities to create in that way. So as we get started, I want to illustrate that concept by showing you my screenshot of some emojis. Now, here we are at the end of the day. I don't know how your day went today, but if you would take just a second and take a look at my emojis here, I'd like for you to think about how's your day going? Where are you at right now? And the way we're going to do that is just kind of look at the emojis and decide which one or two of those best describes and shows, illustrates how you feel right now this afternoon. And so you may think, well, that's kind of funny and that's kind of silly, but really this illustrates where students are, and I tell you why. Because it's very visual, and students are used to a new conversation and language that deals with visual images, and emojis have become a part of their communication. So when I look at this, this screenshot of the various ones, I will be honest that if you look at the top row, over the 4th and the 5th from the left, that's really kind of how those illustrate how I feel this afternoon. I'm very excited about being here and sharing some things with you. The weather outside isn't too bad. We've had a little bit of rain, but nothing major. And I've gotten, an opportunity to start to relax. It's summertime for me. So when I look at those emojis, that best illustrates where I'm at. And the same thing I hope is true for you, that whether you're very content and happy, or maybe today was frustrating and so one of those emojis illustrates that for you, or maybe it's just the overwhelmed emoji there with the big eyes is how you feel. The idea here is that when we use emojis with students, it's amazing how much more information I'm getting from them. When I ask teachers or kids, how are you? Everybody says, I'm fine. But boy, the difference comes when I show them emojis and I say, okay, again, which one of these emojis best tells me how you are today? Lot more information, lot more discussion. Now we're looking at that in terms of personal things, but I want you to think about how you could use emojis with content. So let's go into math or science or social studies and think the same thing. You've just taught this wonderful lesson. You want to check for understanding. Why not give the kids an emoji, a set of emojis, and you can limit it down to fewer than these. They select one and talk to a neighbor about why that emoji best describes how they feel about learning that content. They can use this in reflection of a piece of writing or a project that they have completed, and then write about why that is how they feel about the work that they've done. I'm using emojis over and over in classrooms of kids of all ages with great success. And again, it speaks to our definition that we are a very visual society, and to be literate in this society, it is including understanding how to use visuals, and emojis happen to be a great example of that. So I want to challenge you to work emojis into your instruction somehow as an exit slip or as a pre-assessment about what kids know prior to you teaching something, or just as a checkpoint along the way to see how they feel about an activity or experience, or really emotionally how they are for that day. So let's start with that. As we continue then to chat about visual literacy, let me go a little bit farther, and we're really going to take a couple minutes and talk about that whole piece about pictures and videos and the importance of it in instruction. I don't know of a teacher anywhere that doesn't use some type of visual. I mean, in today's classrooms, we really don't feel like we're reaching the kids until we have a visual, that it seems to be the very thing that grabs their attention and keeps it. And so when I have been working with a lot of new teachers in the last couple of years, and we're looking at their lesson plans, I'll be honest with you, one of the Lori requirements is now you must have a visual for every single lesson. And it could be a graphic organizer, it could be a picture, it could be a video clip, but I'm really adamant about that. And my preference would be that those things be provided at the beginning of the lesson, because it gives the students a hook for understanding the content. So for visual literacy, we've got to help kids to not only use images, but to make sense of them. So let's talk for just a couple of minutes about how you can do that in your own instruction, and what are some things that you could have students do. So I'm going to kind of build some foundation for this piece as well. If you take a look at my logo in front of you, I think every one of you probably said the same thing to yourself, oh, McDonald's. Again, the power of the visual. You see, what we know about the brain is that the brain stores things in pictures. And so when you have things like logos, kids recognize them. Really popular in our society right now, not only would be emojis, but now we have memes. I think this one is pretty funny, and some of you may feel this way right now at the end of school. But memes give us an understanding. They bring humor to our world based on the images and the words and how they play together. And so this is a really interesting piece of information from a neuroscientist, and he has a website and books that are called Brain Rules. And I want you to take a look at this information and see if you find this to be true with your own instruction, that we remember pictures. that when we hear things, we don't remember all of it. As it says here, 3 days later, you're only going to remember 10% of what I'm telling you right now. But because I'm adding pictures, you're going to remember about 65% of what I say today. And so what is interesting is that we really are not as good about listening and retaining information and even just reading text. But anytime we add a visual or picture to that, our memory increases incredibly. And so I have found that to be true with working with adult learners and students. So let's put some strategy in action, okay? Some of you are going to already remember the meme. Some of you are going to already remember the emoji. Let's go further and give you some other things that you can try out with your students. I want you to think about, you're getting ready to teach a new lesson or unit about a topic maybe the kids don't have a huge background. I mean, they know, for instance, we're going to read about polar bears. I'm making it very simplistic. I mean, they know they're white, they know they're bears, they know that they survive the cold. Well, one of the ways that we could introduce prior to reading about polar bear, what do you hear, or an informational text about polar bears, we could show pictures. But from that, that's really not as powerful since it's a new concept for our kids. I live in Missouri. We don't have polar bears here, so I'm going to need to build a deeper understanding of that. So the way that we do that would be something like this, just simply showing a very simple video clip, and I'm going to let it run for just a minute. I want you to check out, watch this polar bear in action. He's not saying anything, he's just moving. But I have found in using this as an introduction with kids that they understand more about the polar bear prior to reading our text. And so, for instance, as I've shown this to groups of kids, they're like, oh, they have fun. They play. They haven't maybe thought of that before. They also notice in this video clip that underneath that white, there's a dark part to the skin, and they're super curious about what is that, and is that why they stay so warm in the cold. They also make comment about the paws and the size of them and so forth. So my point here is that when we are introducing brand new content, pictures are lovely, but another great thing is, if you can, to find video clips that will illustrate that concept. What you show in 30 seconds to 1 minute will stick with those students much more than us trying to explain it, and even just showing images. A great website for this, and I'm going to reference it here in just a moment as well, is watch know learn, and I'm going to reference it in our tech tools in the back in just a few minutes in the end part of the presentation. Watch know learn has become for me this really wonderful gallery of videos that I can pull things like this when I'm getting ready to introduce new concepts or to enrich a concept. The other piece about showing videos I want to stress is that it should be short. That what we have found is that videos that go very lengthy are not, the kids are not going to remember all that. So choose sections of a video clip or very short pieces like this to make your point. So again, great idea, and a tech tool that you can go to find free videos to show in the classroom, and so forth. And I'll show you that again in a moment. I want to show you another strategy. So this one we call a picture and word splash. This is one of my very favorite in introducing informational text is for classrooms. Now, if you're teaching kindergarten, hold on for a minute because I have a different example for you in a second. So if you'll notice in front of you, I've got this image and then I've got these words around it. What I would ask my students to do is to take a look at that, and knowing those terms that are there, try to figure out what the text is going to be about that we're getting ready to read. And you'll notice these don't seem very positive. You've got, artificial sweeteners and law and cancer and weight gain and diabetes, but they would talk together and they would begin to put together an understanding of the content. Now, because I've added that image, this changes it from just a list of words on the board. I know it sounds silly, but the brain is connecting everything they know about Diet Coke immediately when they see it, or what they don't know about it, and then when you put the words together, they're able to piece together meaning. Now, this would get us ready to go into the actual text, which is my next tech tool that I want to highly suggest. This is Newsela, and I use Newsela for all kinds of things. They are informational text articles, and not only are they current and high interest and have great images. Look at this cool image that goes with this article, but the magic of Newsela really is on the right-hand side. You'll see this blue bar. You can differentiate the reading level of students by simply clicking the level of the text on the right-hand side here. So this has become my go-to place when I'm doing reading instruction and I want to differentiate. It may be that I want everybody to understand this information about this article, so I'll just change the reading level to meet the levels of my kids. Sometimes I want each group to read a different type of topic, and I can still find things for every reading level. So Newsela is free. There's also a paid version, but the free version is what I use most often. I don't pay for the larger version of that, and it works like a charm, and I use it constantly. Now, the strategy here for visual literacy, again, we want them to be able to understand, so we're using the visuals with the words to set that background prior to reading. Let's do one that's a little bit different. And it's similar in the sense that we're going to start with visuals. I'm telling you, it's the power of pictures. So in this case, we're obviously going to be reading something about bees. Instead of just jumping into the text, I would have several really great images here. And I would ask the students, again, look at those images and decide what do you think that that's going to be about, talk about it, and then we would move into reading for that. My favorite website that is a high interest one that the kids really love is Wonderopolis. Wonderopolis is free. There's no login, there's no password. Each of the topics that they have has a video usually. It also has some pictures that go along with it, so it's great for discussion and so forth. It also has the capacity where it will read the text to the students, and that's really, really helpful for many, many of our students. This is why I suggest it for younger students because of the Read to Me feature. Wonderopolis, .org. Check it out. Great for meeting the needs of kids and you being able to model reading and taking a look at the visuals that are provided with the text in order to help the kids become better learners. All right, so let's keep going. So we've got a couple strategies there. A third one in this department, if you will, would be the Teen Tribune, Tween Tribune type of websites. They are very similar to what I just showed you with Wonderopolis and with the first one with Newsela. They each are high interest, short articles, great pictures. Even if you just use the pictures and had discussions, great place to go. These are also free for you and your students to use. When we talk about using pictures with students, one of the things is that we want to keep in mind that the pictures also help students develop higher order thinking skills. They make predictions, they anticipate, they ask questions, and so I love using personal images, but I also have some awesome places for you to go. I want to talk to you about let's build capacity for visual literacy by getting kids to really strategically look at images and one, see if they're legit, and then secondly, to say what do they think they know and begin to apply the things that they already know to that situation. So one of the sites is this one. So we see this picture. This comes from What's Going On in This Picture by the New York Times Learning Network. And so what the New York Times Learning Network does, they not only have sets of lessons, but they also have this great little set of questions that they really encourage us to use when kids are examining pictures. Why? To develop their visual literacy. So they ask students to examine really cool pictures of all different kinds of what's going on, what do you see that makes you think that, and what more can you find. What I like about doing perhaps, you know, for me, I love picture of the day. Kids love interesting pictures, but I want them to look strategically. So we always follow these questions. What's going on? What do you see that proves that or makes you think that? How do you know that? And then what more can you find? And the reason that we do that, it causes students to ask more questions and be curious for further learning. It also helps them to make sense of what they have and to apply their knowledge in a real-world setting. So check out the Learning Network's What's Going On in This Picture. And the other one for excuse me, a picture of the day is Photo of the Day by National Geographic. Oh my word, beautiful pictures every single day of either people groups or places around the world or interesting animals, etc. It changes every single day. These are awesome to put up and use as bell ringers, beginning, prompts for writing, picture prompts, as well as, again, answering the questions that we talked about. And the purpose of that is we have to make kids take the time to really examine what they're seeing. Why? Because there's so much out there. Some of it is not real, and they've got to become savvy and make sense of those things. So these type of experiences and strategies really slow kids down and make them focus on those ideas. The next thing I want to talk about is moving kids in visual literacy. Remember, they have to understand, they have to be able to create, and they have to use this. So one of the struggles is when you are using text, moving kids to writing about the text. So kind of a formula that works really well is have students read your text, and hopefully you supported them with some images and videos prior to reading. Have them summarize as a diagram of some kind. I'm going to show you a couple examples, and then use that to do writing. You say, well, you mean just a graphic organizer? I'm going to show you both. I think both have their place. I don't think every time it has to be a graphic organizer, but it has to be a diagram, and this is a really good demonstration of what kids know. So let's kind of look at a couple examples really quickly. This moves our kids from just complacent readers to active writers. So for instance, let's say you were having the kids take a look at, you're trying to decide, is a spider an insect, and are all insects the same? Start with your visual, okay? That's our lesson we've learned already. So I've got these visuals of these two creatures, and you're looking at these critters and you're saying, okay, are these insects? Are they spiders? How do I know? What do I notice are similar and different between these two images? So have your discussion right off the bat. What do we see that we notice is the same and different? Now this could be for any topic that you're teaching, but in this case we're just focusing on these little guys. Then you're going to move into the text. So you've built prior knowledge. They've kind of looked at images and seen what they know and they don't know, and compared and contrast. Now we're going to move into some great text. So we have a book here about the spectacular, spider book. It might be that you pulled an article from online like this, just a very simple article about spiders. Go ahead and read your text as you would normally do, focusing on, again, what they noticed in those initial observations with those visuals. And then I've got a simple, in this case, I do have a graphic organizer. And here what I'm asking them is, between the book and the article and the pictures that we've looked at, to state and make real simple statements about what they know about insects and what they learned about spiders. And so we really have scaffolded this very well so that they've done that, and now they're able to either move into writing immediately based on what they see here, or you can add this step, which is give them a picture of one or the other, and in this case a spider, and ask them to label it. So that's a true diagram. So we had a graphic organizer, but we also have a diagram. That diagram really will show their understanding or lack of understanding about that topic. And again, we're taking that extra step to demonstrate that visually before we put it into writing. I know we do that a lot in getting kids organized to brainstorm topics, but it's really important that they work through that as well with informational text, so that they feel secure and supported and able then to move into writing. They now have the vocabulary, the key points, and they move in. So that's just an illustration of moving from text to writing. The missing piece there is always the diagram, the graphic organizer. Some visual needs to be present before they jump into writing, and your strugglers will really appreciate that. So another example of that kind of thing is that when you're talking about vocabulary, do it visually. So especially abstract concepts like freedom. So I've got a couple images here. What it is, this is freedom, the girl running on the beach. What it's not, being locked in a cage. And then this overall is where they can put it into their own writing, define freedom in their own way. Again, start with our visuals and get kids to think about what it is, what it's not. Now, obviously, you're not going to do this with 20 words, but you will want to do this kind of comparison if you have a couple key vocabulary terms, and if they're a little bit abstract, using the visuals first will, again, they'll remember it much better and understand the definition. All right. So I'm getting to the last couple of things here. We've got some strategies to use in our classroom. Now I want you to consider a couple of the skills that the kids need in order to be able to surf, and use the tools that we have. So I have a statement, and I want you to decide if it's fact or fiction. And so I found this quote all over the internet. And it said 90% of information transmitted to the brain is visual, and visuals are processed 60,000 times the speed of text, okay? Now, I thought this was awesome because it goes along with what we're talking about. But the problem is, as I began to dig through it, could not substantiate this quote. Unfortunately, in today's world, we have a lot of this. A lot of information being thrown at kids that it could be true or it might not be true. So we're going to talk really quickly about what are the things, the skills kids need to have and we need to have. This sounded great, but this was not legitimate. I could not find an author for this anywhere, but unfortunately it had been replicated and placed on all kinds of websites with no way of knowing where it came from. This definition of literacy from Don Levy, I think, makes really good sense for where we're at right now. The power to tell the difference between fact and fiction is what literacy is all about. So very quickly, a couple things you can do to help your kids to be that literate person. Teach them to notice web features. Understand how to navigate and understand where things are. So for instance, here they are on National Geographic Kids, where not only how to get around and what are the web features, but where's the meat? Where would they find the information? Where are the things that are sort of extra and not the important things? We have to teach kids not only how to navigate, but where do they need to put their time depending on the task that they have in front of them. Another key important thing they need to understand is how to evaluate internet sources and know if they're real or if they're made up. So I want to show you something really quickly. Not only can they find the authors and make sure that that same information is repeated on other, legitimate sites, but they need to know the difference between these things. They need to understand if it's a .net or .com or .org. They need to understand what these stand for. And obviously, if it's in .edu, it's an educational site. A .org, an organization. .com's usually for profit. Now, the one that I want them to know is the .com, .co. That represents that a site has been copied. It's a copy of a site, and boy, that's a big red flag. So we want them to understand the differences between those when they're looking up a source to make sure not only is it legitimate, is it a copy of something else and has been changed, and thirdly, when they're looking at things online, they need to make sure that when they Google that same topic that they're getting the same information from many different sources, and then if they give an author, that they can find that author elsewhere online. Okay, couple more real quick things. We want to teach kids to evaluate infographics, that they need to not browse by these and just, run by them, but they need to really take a look at who created it, who sponsored it, if it was sponsored, what information is being shared, and really what does the infographic share? What's the number of students or number of people involved in the information? Just like they would read a survey, they need to understand with infographics those same things. So we want to teach them who did it, how many people were involved, what is this really a representation of. The next one is annotating. getting kids to think digitally, to begin to use the tools, for instance, on iPads, where they annotate, where they mark, highlight, and put keywords and flag things so that they can go back to the key points as they're reading, because reading online can be very different than reading just a book. So teach them the digital tools for annotation for the devices they're using. Some of you are using some Google products, some of you are using iPads. Show them where those tools are and teach them to, again, just like you would do in a regular text, how do you highlight and flag those important pieces. And then finally, teaching them to read media. This picture, is this really happening? You would hope not. And in fact, actually showing them how I can take that, drop it into Google, and find out that that is not a true image. And so getting them to ask themselves as a person, is this true? Where's the source of this image? And knowing where that comes from, because so much of what we are seeing online right now is not true, and adults and students are getting, you know, they're stumbling over those things. So we have to teach them to be aware and not just take everything for granted. Finally, let me leave you with my favorite tech tools for visual literacy for kids to create or find. So we talked about Watch, Know, Learn in the beginning of our presentation about videos. Check it out, guys. We don't have to pay for it. We can go and search for good things to use in the classroom. So I like that one. Seesaw, if you are using iPads or tablets, and even an online version of this is available where kids can create and share, and with parents and other kids in the classroom. I consider this like Google Drive for little guys, and it's fantastic, but I love the creation pieces that they've added to Seesaw. Really worth your time to check that out. The next one is for you. It's Canva. It is my go-to graphic designer app and website. It is cloud-based. You can use it on any device. If you teach older students, you got to get them on Canva. They can create infographics, presentations, resumes, and now they just added this week, they can make animated GIFs. You know, GIFs or GIFs, however you want to call them that. But the Canva is mainly free. There are some paid components, but I still use the free version. Do check it out. You yourself will find it very helpful, and older students will do beautiful things with it. And PictoChart. PictoChart, if you are teaching kids to make infographics, this is the most popular one outside of Canva for educators to use. PictoChart, is really focusing on educators right now, and they make it very easy for students to create those type of things. And finally, this is a new one for me this year, and it's called Mentimeter. And it is very similar to if you've ever used Poll Everywhere, but it's free, and you can create word clouds by everybody, putting in different words. You can do polling. You can do all kinds of interactive type things that create, charts and graphs based on student feedback. And so I highly encourage you to use Mentimeter in your classroom to interact with the content. And again, it's very visual, and your students will really appreciate that. It'll keep them engaged. So I know that's a really quick run through with our conversation about visual literacy, but it is extremely important that kids understand, use, and be able to create things with picture and multimedia and video format. So I hope that today you've got a couple strategies and you've got a couple of tech tools that will help you on your journey with visual literacy. Thank you so much for joining me today. I've thoroughly enjoyed being here with you.
Thanks, Lori. I hope everybody enjoyed the presentation. I'm just going to take a minute to let anybody who does have any questions for Lori the opportunity to get them in there. I'm not sure that we'll get to them, but we'll collect those at least and get them to Lori if we don't have time. And would like to just let everybody know that for joining us, we would like to offer you a 10% discount off SDE PD events or on-site training by using the promo code W052417 before June 24th. And that code again is today's date with the W in front of it. You might be interested in saving 10%, joining Lori and thousands of other educators at Ed.'s 2017 National Conference in Las Vegas, July 10th through 14th, with 6 strands covering pre-K, K, first grade, second grade, DI, and teaching math, all presented by experts in their field. The National Conference is really one of the largest PD events for educators and an experience you won't forget. You can learn more about the conference at sde.com/national. And if you do know a new K through 5 teacher that might that could use some real-world info on teaching in today's classrooms, have them check out Lori's new teacher boot camp in Memphis, Tennessee, July 17th through 18th, and in Jacksonville, July 20th through 21st. My understanding, Lori, is you'll be sharing tips and strategies that weren't taught in college to help new teachers survive and thrive.
Yes, it's totally based, just focused on brand new teachers or teachers that have only taught a short amount of time. It's going to be a ball. I'm so excited about it and showing the real world classroom, skills that you need.
Excellent. So if you do know a new teacher who could use something like that or would like to share that out with somebody, if they hit the SDE website, sde.com, you will certainly find it there. And please do follow us on social media. You can follow Lori on Twitter, Dr. Lori Elliott, and you can follow SDE4 Educators with the number 4. I want to thank you all for your patience as I went through that, and it looks like we're good on the questions, Lori. So I would like to thank you again and thank everybody who joined us today, and hope everybody has a great rest of the day. Thanks for joining us, folks. Bye-bye.